Knock at the Cabin is the latest film from M. Night Shyamalan. It features a family who are confronted by a group of home invaders with a very peculiar goal. We were more positive than most on Old, so we're going into Cabin with an open mind. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. It is the October-thon. I am Peter, and I'm joined as always by Tim.
The gentle giant, as it were.
I'm pretty sure I'm taller than you, but aye, alright.
Physically, yes.
Oh, okay, just spiritually.
Yeah.
Alright.
Spiritually, I tower over you.
This is a horror movie.
I'm a little bit of a Batista.
Alright, sure. Yes, you walk alone, yes, all that stuff. Yes, welcome everyone. This is a horror movie podcast where we get together, we talk about horror movie. It is October, of course. We do as many episodes as we can in October. And because Tim was on paternity leave for a lot of the year, we are using this as a chance to go back and check out a lot of the movies that came out that we didn't get a chance to do in that time. And this episode is one such movie. This is M. Night Shyamalan's film, Knock at the Cabin. Thank you for demonstrating what a knock was. For the audience, Tim.
You're welcome.
Oh dear. So this is
not to be confused with Don't Knock Twice or
yes.
Knock Knock.
I don't remember a knock knock. I mean, I remember not liking Don't Knock Twice.
Knock Knock was the Eli Roth movie with Keanu Reeves.
Oh, we never did that. I've not seen that.
I've seen it, unfortunately.
Well, maybe one day we'll have to do it. But
yeah, Eli Roth month is coming, unfortunately.
Oh no! Don't say such horrible things.
I mean, we're gonna have to do Thanksgiving, obviously.
Oh yeah, he's got that one coming out. Yeah, depending if that. I don't know if that's coming out in the UK, so I don't know if we can actually do it in November. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What is Thanksgiving not a big thing in the UK?
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. Honestly, Tim, it blew my mind when I found out Canada had a Thanksgiving.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, why do Canadians have Thanksgiving? And it's not on the same day, it's like a different day. It's close to the other one, but it's not quite. I think it's October, I want to say. But whatever.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, same with Canada Day, which is like 2 days before July 4th or whatever it is.
Yeah, they always want to just one-up us, like, oh yeah, we'll do your holiday, but just a little bit before.
Yeah, just a little bit sooner. But yes, so
their Christmas, I think, is in October as well.
But anyway, so this movie, Knock at the Cabin, is based on a book, which I actually didn't know. The only reason why I knew this is
because you don't read.
The only reason why I knew this was based on a book is because 5 minutes before our time to record, like we were starting in 5 minutes, and Tim, out of nowhere, messages me and says, "Hey, I don't know if you know this is based on a book, and I hear there's a lot of differences. Maybe you should do some research before we record so we could talk about them." And all I could think was, but if you know about these differences, why aren't you just going to tell us about them? And then if you don't, then why are you telling me to go research it?
I mean, I read the book. I know like the big differences. So, I mean, I can bring them up, but I thought it would be a better discussion if we were both informed. I mean, I guess if we got to fall back on the teacher-student status we normally have, we can, but...
I mean, I could have reacted to them live. I actually did skim a book synopsis just before we started, just so that I'd be aware. I mean, that's all end of spoilers. We'll do that at the end of the spoiler section. Yeah. That's not something we'll talk about till then, but yes. True. So, yes, Knock at the Cabin. I didn't know a whole lot going in. The trailer... Are you going to do that every time I say the title? The trailer was, I would say vague, but it intentionally did not reveal too much, right? So this came out in like March or April. I didn't really hear too many people talk about it. It was kind of under the radar, but I did hear a little bit of positivity, some negativity, not much either way. So
I'm just like imagining you like at like McDonald's or something, like hiding under like some table of teens as they talk about the movie with like your ear pressed up, like listening, like, oh yeah, they liked it. Interesting.
Why wouldn't I just sit at the booth next to them? Why would I have to be under the table to hear them, Tim? It'd be much less suspicious than me being under the table next to a bunch of teenage legs. I'll get put on a list, Tim.
One can only hope.
Ah, Jesus. So yeah, this movie is about a family who are spending some vacation time at a cabin. A pair of dads, a gay couple, and their daughter, and 4 strangers come, and would you believe it, they knock on the door of the cabin. Nothing you'd like to do at this juncture, Tim?
No, good.
Oh, you're a sly one, you are, Timothy. Yeah, so yeah, that's the screw you. I can't swear in this one. It's a public episode, Tim. Don't make me want to swear. So yeah,
I always forget this is a family show.
Yeah, for families of degenerates, and if you look like you belong as a family in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then yes, that's the sort of families we're appealing to, I think. Otherwise, it's just solo individual weirdos. That's our people.
Yeah, Han Solo, Star Wars story.
That was the weirdest reference you may have ever made on this show, and that is saying something. I literally just said the word solo, and you just took it to Star Wars. Oh, this is... You can tell Tim's not recorded in a couple of weeks because he's got this fire in him.
Yeah. Also maybe heavily medicated.
Yeah, you said to me before we started, oh, by the way, I'm still recovering from being sick, so I might be a little low energy. Jesus Christ, this is your low energy. What are you going to be like back at full power?
Good question.
Oh, dear. So, yeah. Obviously, these 4 strangers, they appear like they could be intimidating. It's quite tense, as you expect. But they're there basically with a particular mission in mind. It's not just a stranger-style home invasion movie. It's something more direct and specific, and we'll get into all that in spoilers. I mean, do I say what they're there to do? Like, just broad strokes? Because I feel like that is a spoiler, even though it is kind of the premise.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know.
We'll just leave it.
Yeah,
We'll just leave
I feel like it's... Yeah, they're there to do something.
They're there to do a thing that is redacted and cannot be spoken at this juncture in the show. I hope you all understand and appreciate that. Okay. Well, I guess we'll get into it. I mean, what's funny is that, it's only a couple of years ago that we reviewed Old, and we were both kind of positive on Old. It wasn't without its it wasn't without its faults or something to critique. But we both kind of came out of it going, you know what? Warts and all, that was a film. It was a director trying to make a movie with interesting cinematography, with an intriguing story. Yeah, there were some silly bits, but we kind of left it feeling that, you know what? I think I'd watch that again, and maybe Shyamalan still got it.
Yeah.
So, I guess the question is, Tim, is now that you've watched Knock at the Cabin, how do you feel about said cabin that is being knocked on?
Yeah, I would say this movie's okay. I like it. I don't love it. I think it starts off really well. One thing I'll say is I think there's a lot of good performances here, especially like Batista just really steals the whole movie. He is such a huge, massive man, and like he is so like his body is just so intimidating, and just like putting him kind of in this like weird setting as like this stranger you meet in like the middle of the woods is like so scary, but he plays like this like such a nice like gentle person that it makes it so off-putting, and I just thought he did a terrific job, and then and everyone else I thought was pretty good too. Like Rupert Grint was like pretty good as as being the asshole, and then the little girl, not always the easiest, being a kid actor, but I thought she did a pretty good job. So yeah, that's good. And I like probably about the first half of the movie or so. I think, it has a good atmosphere. Like, Shyamalan does a good job of kind of making it eerie and, presenting this premise, where it's hard to, understand exactly, maybe, what is real and what's not. And yeah, I dig that. And then I think about halfway through or so, it kind of takes some turns and it kind of loses me, like not to the point where I start hating the movie and I'm like, oh, like screw this, I want to shut it off or whatever, but to a point where I'm like, oh yeah, I see where they're going with this. I think I would have liked it better if they would have done this. And I think that'll be where it'll be interesting to kind of give them the differences between the book and the movie, because I like what the book does more than what they ended up doing in the movie, but obviously we'll save all that for spoilers. It's kind of tough to talk about a lot of the plot stuff, which I think is kind of interesting stuff, but it really isn't much you can talk about without going into spoilers. But yeah,
we'll get to all that in a bit. We're just kind of doing general feelings here and whatnot.
But overall, I'd say I liked it. I think it's worth a watch. I definitely think it could have been better, though.
Yeah, this movie sort of... I was almost surprised it was based on a book, because it does feel very Shyamalan, and like he definitely picked something that fit his type of story. But I do actually quite like this type of... I mean, obviously I like bottle stories which are all set in one location, which this effectively... it's got a couple of flashbacks here or there, but it's all effectively in one location. And I do really appreciate the type of movie where character A says this crazy thing is real, or this crazy thing is happening, and character B is like, no, that's ridiculous, of course that's not a thing. And then the movie's about either side trying to convince the other that they are right. And I actually do kind of like that premise, and that's effectively what this movie becomes. It's this group of 4 people who believe something, and then our family who do not believe it, and that's the back and forth of the film.
I mean, essentially that's what this podcast is. Trying to convince you that The Boy is a top 10 movie.
You'll never convince me of that. There's some jokes I want to make based on the plot of this, but I can't because it would spoil everything. But I like the premise. I thought it was well shot, as Shyamalan's films usually do. They usually look quite good, and I think that's no mistake or exception here.
Yeah, I think that's something that kind of gets lost a lot in the Shyamalan conversation, because people focus on like a lot of maybe like the twist, or like sometimes if the movies have like crazy dialogue or bad acting or stuff, they'll focus on that, but no one really talks about like he has a good eye, his cinematography is usually always on point,
and it's been that way since day one. Go all the way back to The Sixth Sense. That movie's exceptionally directed, and it's just like, for all the other things that he's faltered at times in his career, he's had that rough patch where it was like happening after Earth, Last Airbender, and I've only seen one of those tragedies, but annoyingly, we've got a show on Patreon that I do with David where we do the worst movies of all time, so no doubt some of those are going to end up popping in at some point. But he's always had that visual eye, and I think it's something that I was hearing people talk about movies earlier today, actually, and it got me thinking about this a little bit, is that I feel like, and I'm not just saying this to shit on the Marvel movies, right? But I do think that there is kind of this thing where most of the MCU
you better
got
not
big.
Be saying an unkind word about my beloved Morbius.
I'm going to say a word about Morbius.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. I couldn't say anything if I wanted to.
It's a horror movie. We should do it.
Oh, why? Why would you say such a thing, Tim? But movies, like, it's almost like whilst the Marvel movies were popular and that was all the most successful stuff that was coming out every year, like, major mainstream movies kind of forgot to like all the other things that make movies good. Like, people like the Marvel movies because of the characters, by and large, right? And occasionally maybe the stories are compelling in some of the better ones. but they've never, for the most part, looked like great films, right? They've never been amazingly well directed or anything like that. And
I think that there's a few exceptions, but overall, I think like I like I like James Gunn a lot. I think he does but I feel like at least like Guardians and stuff like has like a little bit of a style to it and
a personality is maybe a word you'd say as well. And I think one thing that really stuck out, because this conversation basically culminated in people talking about how this year between Barbenheimer, that new Turtles movie which is really good, like there was a lot of movies came out this year that were successful instead of the ones that had been successful up until this year that connected with people. And I do think that it's not just that people have superhero fatigue, it's that people kind of want just good looking movies again, or they want really well written movies again, or they want so on and so on. And I realize some people who are diehard Marvel fans are going to be like, but they are well written and look good. Like whatever, like I'm not going to have the debate with you. But
if you like them, that's totally fine. But like, I mean, you can't stack them against like, like really competent directors and not notice a difference between like the filmmaking.
Absolutely. And when I watch something like Knock at the Cabin, it is directed. It's got I can sense the camera moving in a good way, where it's like, oh, it's staying on this static frame for a long time, and that's giving it a really cool atmosphere because I'm watching it all play out in this one wide shot. Or it starts to, frame a character kind of weirdly because they might be a little unhinged or something, there's a scene in this movie where the four characters are talking to the family, and whenever it cuts to Rupert Grint's character, who's kind of like, he's the angry one, he's got the temper, he's a bit more unhinged. His framing of his head, like there's so much empty space above his head and to like one side. He's only occupying this like small corner effectively of the frame, and it's really like off-kilter framing. And the point of it is to say, hey, he's different from the rest of them. Like the camera's telling you that as a visual cue. And there's just so many little things in the movie like that that I quite get into. So anyway, just to sort of sum up my feeling, I actually quite like the movie. I don't think it's perfect.
Nice.
I would say that I don't necessarily think it has a pivot halfway through like you do. I would say that maybe the ending is perfectly fine. The ending did not bother me, but I will say the ending wasn't as exciting or as like shocking to me as I was maybe expecting it would be. Does that make sense? Like I was expecting more of like a punch, and it was like, oh no, it just kind of ended like, okay, this was a fine way to end it, but maybe that wasn't quite the final grand slam hit that I was maybe hoping it was going to have right at the end. But so I just made a baseball reference, everyone.
Whoa!
Be proud of me or not, I don't care, but acknowledge it. Anywho, so. Yeah, and I agreed with what you said as well. Batista is great in this movie. I think all the performances, like you say, are quite good. I think Batista sticks out. Because I think what's really important about him as a character is that right from the very first second, even though he could be very intimidating, and you understand why to the other characters he is intimidating, from the very first time he says something, he may just be crazy, but I believe he believes it. You know?
Absolutely.
I believe he thinks this is completely real. And I think that's good. So,
and he's like, so intimidating that it's like, you see a guy like that, and then you hear what he believes, and it's like, ah, crap, like this is not gonna end well for me.
Yeah, it's almost like he wanted to play the opposite character to Drax. It's like, I've been playing the big sort of like the muscle meathead for too long. Now I want to do a big sympathetic man. So,
so did he used to be a wrestler? Is he a wrestling guy?
Yes. In fact, when you first brought him up in this review, I said he walked alone, and I said that because his theme music had that as a lyric.
Okay, he's got to be one of like the better like wrestlers turned actors.
Honestly, I think he's the best. I think by the time we've hit this, and he's had obviously the Guardians movies, and he was in Blade Runner 2049. It was a small role, admittedly. But he was in something else between that and this that also I thought he was good in. I can't remember what it is now. But like between all that and the fact that The Rock's obviously had a lot of movies, but The Rock's never had a great movie, really. He's got a lot of okay to bad movies.
Yeah, he also kind of seems to play the same character most of the time. At least that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, but I think
Bautista seems like he has range, you know.
Yeah, I'm literally sitting in IMDb. Why am I not just clicking on his name to see what else is popping up? Oh, he was in Riddick. I mean, that was obviously probably the first thing I ever saw him in as a movie actor. So no surprise I didn't remember. But I mean, what else was he in? Oh, he was in Army of Thieves, which was not sorry, Army of the Dead.
Oh, right.
Which we didn't like, but he wasn't a negative in that. He was good. Yeah. So he's been in a lot of direct-to-video stuff as well. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's got a spotless record, but it does kind of feel like like you say, he's got range, and it feels like he's not as up himself as maybe like some other wrestler turned actors are.
Totally.
So I think that's fair. Speaking of a cast, one of the dads is played by Jonathan Groff, who is from Mindhunter. I think most people will know him from. He was Holden, I believe was his character's name in that show. So that was nice to see him. Rupert Grint's the other famous face, obviously. Most people will know him from the Harry Potter movies. So did not have his English accent in this. He was going full Midwest or whatever.
He's a Boston guy.
Yeah.
I think he said he's from Medford, but that's, Boston adjacent.
It's Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else in Massachusetts that anyone brings up other than Boston?
Not really.
Well, I guess Salem, but not for good reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how accurate the accent was, but I will say this: I never heard his real accent slipping through.
Yeah, it did kind of sound like he was playing it a little intense, but if it's the character, so I don't think there's a problem with it.
Yeah, he's high strung. I didn't really recognize anyone else. At a glance, no one else was sticking out to me. Someone I knew. Obviously, it's entirely possible that I saw some people and everything, or everything and anything. But yeah, so hey ho. So
I like the guy that played the infomercial announcer on the TV. He was good.
Tim's being coy. He's bringing up the M. Night Shyamalan cameo that he always has. Yeah, he's basically doing QVC shopping channel stuff, but it's just an air fryer. He's just talking about an air fryer. Actually, to be fair, I think they're doing a cooking show. I think they're talking about how to do some recipes, but I think he's trying to sell the air fryer ultimately. Yes. I was wondering how he'd get his cameo in this, but I guess that's one way of doing it. Is he's on the TV. So yeah.
Very different movie if he played Leonard.
Yes. Leonard's Batista's character, just in case anyone didn't get the absurdity of what Tim just said. Leonard is Batista and his sort of group. He's one of the four that come to the cabin. We have Sabrina, who's played by Nikki Amuka-Bird. We have Rupert Grint, who plays Redmond, and then Abby Quinn plays Adrian. So those are the four that come to the cabin. And then the family, Daddy Eric is Jonathan Groff, Daddy Andrew is played by Ben Aldridge, and the little girl, their daughter, is Wen, played by Kristen Kui? I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. It's Cui. How do you pronounce that?
Kui? I don't know. Kui probably.
That's what it sounded like you were trying to do there. Kui. But no, so I wouldn't say there's any weak links in the cast, which is nice. But Batista definitely does steal the show, I think. I think it's partly because he is so physically imposing, but obviously has this very gentle demeanor, which makes him very different. We'll get into the spoilers then, because I think we are just going to have to talk about around things if we don't, and we've went through everything that we can, I think, at this point. Sure. So spoilers for Knock at the Cabin. You have been warned. Do you know, I didn't know where this was going to go, right? So, what?
Actually, that's a good question. So, going into this, like, did you have any inkling of what the premise was, or
Not really.
anything?
Like, I want to say a trailer. At least one of the trailers had the phrase "We're here to save the world," so that like definitely had my mind racing. But one of the very first lines that's said in this whole movie is the little girl when is catching grasshoppers and putting them in a jar. And she holds up the jar, and I don't know if it's the very first line, but if it's not, then it's very close to being the first line. She says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to study you for a while." And I thought this was like foreshadowing the shit out of the rest of this movie. I thought, oh, this is going to turn out to be some social experiment or something because they're all trapped in the cabin, or I don't know. It wasn't. I think obviously it is foreshadowing, but I think it's maybe going more for like she's representing God in the moment and talking about Earth. I don't know.
Makes sense.
Although, actually, first thing I really liked, and this put me in the mood, Tim, is the 1980s Universal logo at the start.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. And they've done this a couple times now. Obviously, they did it with Scott Pilgrim, but that was like 8-bit because it was video game-esque. But they've done it with at least one other movie in the last few years. It may have even been old, for all I can remember, but... I always like it. I love the idea of like a director being able to say, "Hey, I'm not going to use the current, Fox logo or Universal or Warner Bros. I want to use the one from this decade." I like that.
Hell yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good on you.
It was an old school, style, like small scope movie, so I kind of fit the vibe. But yeah, Batista like comes walking out the forest and sits down and talks to her, and he's very natural and good at talking to her. So it actually isn't a surprise later on when it turns out he's actually a school teacher and he talks to kids her age all the time. I'm like, you know what? That actually explains how natural he was able to like sit down and talk to her. And obviously it has maybe a threatening undertone, but like I was saying earlier, as soon as he says things to her, like I'm like, I don't know, I believe that he doesn't actually want to harm her. Like something about like this performance is telling me he's uncomfortable about doing whatever he's doing, but it's leading to something bad overall regardless.
Yeah, and like also, he says like, we're gonna come to your cabin and you have to like let us in. He's not being forceful. Like, he could easily like reach out and grab her, or like say, "Hey, we're gonna storm your home" or whatever. But it's like everything is very casual. Like, like these are villains that like walk up to your house. They're not like lurking and like breaking in and stuff. Like, so that's I like, if anything, it makes it kind of like eerier and more creepy.
Yeah. And the key information that comes out here is that Wen like mentions one of her dads by name, like calls him Eric, and he's like, "You call your dad by his first name?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, I have to. I've got two, so I have to like distinguish between them." And he's like, "Oh, interesting. Like that's clearly something he didn't know, right?" Which at this point we don't really have any reason to believe he knows anything about them, but obviously as we find out soon, like they did know a lot, but they didn't know that. So
and it makes for like, if people are like, oh, like wondering like, is there like a specific reason why it has to be like a like a homosexual couple or whatever, like it helps fuel the kind of ambiguity between their plans like later on, because it kind of presents this other reason for why they might be there, might be intimidating, versus like you wouldn't have that extra layer if it was just like a heterosexual couple or something.
Yeah, well, one of the big things about the movie is that the two dads, Eric and Andrew, are very different people, right? They're different characters, and Eric is this guy that worries. We see it in the flashbacks, we see it in how he responds to things, where he's the one, if they're going to convince anyone of what they're there to do, which we'll get to in a second. I realize we're still not talking about that directly. And then Andrew is the one who clearly has got more of a temper and like has more of a fire to like fight back against things, and is determined to like not accept anything. And he brings up very quickly, as soon as they've got them tied up, like quite early in the movie, he says, "Oh, now you have the queers tied up," and insinuates that they're attacking them. This is like a hate crime. And they all are like, no, wait, we did not know you were gay. Like we've got reasons to do this, but it's not because of that.
Like, oh, please don't cancel us.
But it kind of fuels this idea that Andrew, like in the debate of like, is this thing real that they're talking about or not? part of like his argument is that, well, they're probably doing this because they're homophobic, and that's part of the reason why they're all part of a hate group, you know. And the idea that they've found each other on a message board and that they're in an echo chamber, all these ideas kind of come up, and it's presenting this, you know, backwards and forwards thing. So I think that the movie like opening with like that surprising realization, oh, it's two dads instead of just a you know a more traditional nuclear family. Immediately it's sort of like, okay, this is different then. But that then, because one of my things, as soon as they come in and say what they're there for, the very first thing I said in my head was, okay, but why them? Why is it this family? And you know, the movie obviously pokes at that question a little bit as it goes on. So yeah, we should probably tell everyone what the thing is, right? So they have to, like, they ask nicely to come in repeatedly. Obviously they don't let them in. They say they're going to call the police, but they can't because the phone line's been cut. The cell phones don't get a signal because they're out in the middle of nowhere. All these things. And
I like the way a lot of this is shot, because it's like pretty much like shot from inside. Like you hear the knocking in their voices, but it's all from like the other side of the door. Like, I feel like maybe a less confident filmmaker or something like might be cutting back and forth or whatever. But I like that. Yeah, Shyamalan knows, like, oh no, like you don't have to see them. It's like much scarier to know people are outside and then to hear these voices than that was well done.
It's always from the perspective of the people inside, you know, specifically the dads, because obviously we start off with the little girl meeting one of them, but once she goes and tells their dads, and they're like, wait, what are you talking about? Some guy said he's coming to tell us that we're saving the world. What? And they don't really take it seriously. They're kind of confused. And then obviously Batista walks up to the door and they look out the window and they're like, wait, there's a huge guy out there, like he's huge. But other than that, all you see is like, you know, the odd body going past the window, or you know, but it's always from the perspective of like what they would see inside. Oh, I thought you had something else. Okay.
No, sorry.
So
I was gonna say, like, I forget if we see it right away or if it's a little bit later, but like they'll have these gnarly weapons too, which are
cool. What is it with these what I get why they're there to do what they're doing, but what part of all this like inspired them to make these weird like hybrid weapons? Like Batista comes in and he's got what's effectively an axe with a pitchfork like taped to it, and I'm like, these look barbaric, these things you're carrying.
Also, it's like, I mean, it's already hard enough to convince someone to let you in when you're just a stranger, but like you're also like all holding like these crazy weapons. And
they set up a literal Chekhov's gun here because we find out there's a gun in a safe in the back of their car, so we know that's out there for potential shenanigans at some point. Shenanigans. So the reason why they're there, once they actually have them sort of tied up and like pinned down, right, there's a bit of a fight and a struggle. The only notable thing there really is that Eric gets concussed. He gets swiped and he lands his head on the ground, and he's a bit blurry and he's not quite all there for a little bit as he's healing from that. But they explain what they're there for, and this is I'm not saying the exact phrasing, but the effective thing they say to them is, we're here to save the world. We have all been receiving visions that we have to come here and convince you that your family must agree which one of you will be sacrificed to save the world, or everyone's going to die. And that is the... And it's like... And Joe is so good about this, it's like, okay, this is what the whole movie's about now. The whole movie's about convincing them that that's real. And whether or not it is real or not, like, you know, we'll find out later, maybe. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll be open-ended.
And then in turn, like, you're trying to convince the audience as well. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
You know,
that's what's so good about it, is that you're trying to, like, we're in the audience, or the audience are in like the husband's shoes, where we're sitting there like, oh, this sounds like a bunch of crazy bullshit. The only thing that that they've got on our side for us is that we know we're watching a movie. So part of us is like, yeah, but it's a movie, so it might just be real. And that's part of the fun. But it's like, okay, am I going to buy, not that you would convince me, but am I going to buy that you'll convince them? Like, if one of them actually starts to believe it, am I going to believe that they believe it? And that's where the fun really starts to trickle in, as long as it's handled well from that point on.
Very solid premise. Like, everything I'm pretty much loving so far. And there's a lot of fun to be had with that.
So, that sets the... And obviously Andrew's like, what? This is nonsense. No, like, we're not killing one of us. Which is the natural reaction. Of course they're all like, yeah, we're not killing one of us. Like, you kidding me?
No.
But, I mean, these 4 people say, look, we're not going to hurt you because we can't. We believe you have to choose between the 3 of you. Which is effectively just 2 of them, because like they're not going to have the little girl make this choice.
Right, obviously, yeah.
So it's really just those 2. And that's why throughout the film, from this point on, give or take, we start getting all these little flashbacks of, like, when they first, like, I think it was Andrew introduced Eric to his parents and how awkward that was, because clearly they're homophobic, or at the very least they're very uncomfortable with the fact that their son's gay. When they adopted, when they were discussing their plan, even when they were coming out here to the cabin and the start of the day, just all these things, and it kind of sets up, their characters a little bit, that Eric is the one who might believe things. He's maybe a little more spiritual. He's maybe a little bit more, whatever. Whereas Andrew, we find out, was assaulted by a homophobe in a bar, and that's actually what provoked him into wanting a gun, and like he wanted to feel strong. He wanted to feel like he'd protect himself. So we see him like training in a gym, like kicking a punching bag, and then going and like buying a gun. And it's like, okay, I get his outlook in the world. So I think the movie's really good at that, where it's like, by the time you've had all these flashbacks, like, okay, I understand this character. I understand why he's determined to fight back and say, no, like this is all a lie. This is bullshit, and you're trying to convince me of something, because his entire life as a gay man, people have been trying to convince me that something I am is wrong. So, like all of it clicks from a character level, which is good.
Yeah, and it all like flows together like really well. Like there's never like, a part where they like are doing a flashback and you're like, oh, okay, like this is boring. Let's get back to the cabin. Like it's it all works together really well.
Yeah. So they're like, yeah, and they don't really give the timeline here necessarily, but they obviously say like this is fairly imminent, and that every time they give them like the choice to make the decision, right? Every time they say, "Will you choose?" and they say no, they basically have to murder one of their own 4. So quite quickly, it's Rupert Grint, who puts on this white hood thing. Gets the
no wonder he was like so angry and anxious. Like if you're the first to go,
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's the good point. Actually, he's the one who keeps yelling about them wasting time. Well, this is taking too long to explain. Yeah, he's antsy because he knows he's first. That's the problem here. Yeah, and they explain that they've all been having visions, and that's how they found each other. Is that they basically all imagined each other and kind of met. So, which is interesting.
And it is funny, like you said, like, I wonder how specific these visions are, because it's like, all right, you have to sacrifice one of yourselves. Okay, it's like, well, can you just like shoot me in the head and get it over with or whatever? But it's like, no, we have to bludgeon you with like these homemade instruments. Like it's like so brutal. And I mean, it's nice for us because, it's a horror movie. So, this is where, some of the horror and, it's not like super gory, but I guess if most of the gore and stuff is kind of coming from like these bits, but
no, basically what you really only see is you see blood coming down this. It's this like, when I say a white hood, like it's more like it's almost like a ski mask without any eye holes, right? So it's like just this white covering on his face. But what that does is that when they bash him in the head, you don't see the bash, but you just see like blood trickle down the white. So if you want to really emphasize blood, you have it go down white. Wrestlers, for example, whenever they're going to bleed in a match, they'll wear white so that the blood really shows.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. It actually but like you still kind of feel the brutality, even though like you don't really see a lot. But I mean, just like looking at those weapons and stuff is just like, oof.
Yeah, like this feels like art from Terrifier designed these things. Like they look absolutely monstrous. These weapons. They do. It does though, right?
No. Yeah, I agree.
That's absolutely something he would come up with. So he dies, right? And the idea is that they say in their visions that they saw that after each one of us dies, if you don't make the choice, like first it'll be earthquakes. Next up it'll be a pandemic, right? Which felt like part of the reason why I think this movie maybe was turned into a movie when it was is maybe because of COVID and the idea that this part might really ring true with the audience. But then the third one was like, God himself will make the sky fall, and that one's a bit open to interpretation, but we do see what that means later on. But sure enough, he turns on the news, and there's like news of an earthquake that already happened, but then there's an even bigger one that happens just off the west coast and sort of up towards like Seattle and sort of Portland and stuff like that. And this was interesting to me because they show this on the news, and I'm like, okay, I can see how they're going to try and convince them by showing these really bad things happen after each death. But then I thought, yeah, but like one of these earthquakes already happened, and sure enough, that's what Daddy Andrew argues. He's like, what? Like this already happened. You could have checked the news before you came here. This could just be you using this information to like go against us. So like there's enough like room for like doubt here.
Yeah, I think that's what is really interesting about it is like the job of the movie is to try to convince them to kill one of their own, but then they always come up like with good counter points to all right, why this might not be fake and why we shouldn't do it, which is really interesting.
So I think then they go to bed. They're like, hey, like okay, you can have till tomorrow now. This may be the last sunrise we all see together, so we'll do that in the morning, kind of thing.
I'm kind of curious why do they have to sacrifice themselves if they don't choose? Like, what does that accomplish? It's like, if the world is already going to end, like, can you just be like, well, I'm not going to kill myself if like, I don't know. I wonder what the point of that is.
Well, I mean, at the end of the movie, one of the characters realizes that these four are basically the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Which is a nice touch. I almost wish they didn't say it though. It'd have been nice to sort of realize that's why there's four of them, like later. But I would guess that they just know deep down they have to. I guess like they're kind of like they're
faith
dying.
Is so strong.
They're dying for the sin of no one being chosen. I guess
that makes sense.
If I was to try thing it. When the second person dies, which is the younger woman, Adrian. Who bonds a little bit with the girl first because she makes her breakfast. We find out she's got a kid and she really wants to go back and see him again, but she's expecting to die here, all that stuff. And when she goes, it's quite sad, it's quite dramatic. They turn on the news again, of course, and then this time there's a pandemic. There's a flu outbreak in these three cities, and the one's in the UK, one's in northern US, one's in I think south of Africa, not South Africa, just south of Africa. And they're like, and again, Andrew's got a good point. It's like, yeah, this thing's been building up for weeks. Like we've been hearing about this in the news. This is not a sudden thing that's happening. This doesn't prove anything. And if I was to make a guess as to maybe one of the things that you didn't like is that the next time something happens, the next time one of them dies, and which is a bit more dramatic because it's less of a because that's when the girl gets outside and like Andrew gets free and goes for his gun and all that. But when all that happens, when the third person dies, which is Sabrina, when that happens and they turn on the news, there's no ambiguity to this one because this one is every plane in the sky is falling to Earth. This is not like a coincidence. This is like every single plane in the sky is falling, which did make for a visual. I'll give it that. Like it was obviously this feels like the apocalypse. I'll give that to them.
Yeah, so I mean, this is my big gripe with the movie, which I mean, again, it's not like it made me hate it. It's just I kind of wish maybe they would have done more to keep it feeling like you're unsure of whether this could be real or not. Because at this point, you're basically like, oh, like, yeah, this is happening. This is real. And then that's just kind of my big thing. Because I just liked it much more in the beginning where. Like you're saying, you're having fun being like, okay, they very much believe this. How are they going to convince them? And then like we were saying, like, oh yeah, they'll be like, all right, so here's our reasoning why this is real. And they'll be like, well, actually, here's our reasoning, why it isn't. And then there's still like doubts and stuff. And like, don't really want to get like too much into the book right now, but I'll just say like, I think the big thing with the book that I enjoyed more is you still feel like there's, differences in plot here and there, but I think the big overall difference between the book and the movie is by the end of the book, you still feel that it kind of could go either way. Like it's kind of up to you to make the judgment. Like the book doesn't feel like it picks a side, like the movie very definitely feels like it picks the side, and that the side is this is all real.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting choice. We'll talk about it more when we get to the ending, and we'll compare what the different endings kind of mean, because I think there is meaning to get from both of them.
Sure.
I think for me, it didn't bother me that it was definitely real, and I like the visuals of the planes falling out of the sky. I think
that's fair. Yeah.
For me, though, I think what I was expecting it to confirm it was real at some point, probably. But I think what I was expecting was something that was a little bit more. How do I put this? A bit more 12 Angry Men. So the problem with the planes on the news is that it's just like, here's evidence, it's definitive, it's done. I think what I was expecting is that they were going to have to convince them by just talking to them, by just going through what they saw in their visions, by going through what will happen. And I thought that maybe the kind of the gotcha where, one of them really starts to believe was going to be less about here's definitive proof that you're seeing on TV, and more about, like something you said compared to something that I know from my life, or something that you said earlier goes together. Because when you're watching 12 Angry Men, like, they go through all the crime that they're talking about, and then later on someone says something, and then someone points out that two of the pieces of evidence kind of contradict each other, and it's kind of like a, oh shit, like that feels like, as far as like talking about like whether he's innocent or not, that felt like it's the opposite of a smoking gun, I suppose, because he didn't kill someone potentially, but it feels like it's all in the back and forth, and it's like this realization because all the pieces are put in place. The thing with the TV and like just seeing these things happen on the news, and I understand that it shows how big the scope is, like, even because I do love that as well. I love that the fate of the world's been decided in a room. Like, I love that shit where it's like it feels like the whole world's affected, but it's all just in this room. When that's handled well, I really like it. But the downside to it is that when you can just turn on the TV and see the proof on the screen, at a certain point, it does just kind of feel like not a Deus Ex Machina, but like it can just be like, here it is. There's no intrigue or build up, like, because the first two times they turn on the TV, there's legitimate arguments against why it doesn't mean anything, why it's just a coincidence, why it's just, no, this was already happening, this flu's already been spreading for weeks, these things, natural responses. But the planes falling out of the sky, I completely understand that, because it is just, no, here it's happening and there's really no disputing it. Like, because at that point it's like, well, now it's less about do we believe them and more about like, oh, can we do this horrible thing? Can we make this horrible decision? As opposed to, but I suppose it was always going to have to get to that point at some point. But, maybe it would have been more interesting if one of them really believed and the other one really didn't. And obviously Eric starts to believe first, but I wouldn't say there's like a, it never really becomes like a conflict between them. It's more just he gives a speech, and then Andrew, by the end of the speech, starts to kind of, well, it's over a couple of scenes, I suppose, but
I forget, was it Eric that got the concussion or
yes.
whatever? So I like what they do, like when like when one of the people like sacrifices themselves, he kind of sees this glowing light, which you could kind of interpret as like some type of godly angelic presence or something, or you could just be like, oh well, he has a concussion, like, so obviously he might be seeing things, but that's like another nice little like trick they pull. I thought was clever. Yeah,
and that's one of the things that makes him think that maybe this is all real. Maybe I saw something and now I believe that they saw something, and therefore there's some truth to this. Which okay, that kind of works. But for me, like, like it ultimately, by the time it's just Bautista left, he kind of just, like, they lock him in a room for a bit, but then they go back to get him, and they end up just having him sit there, and he's like kind of, I mean, he's, at the end of the scene, he slits his own throat because he's the last sacrifice. But he says that they still have a bit of time if they're going to do it, to make this decision and kill one of them. But he gives this speech, and he talks about how, he's doing this because, I guide these kids. You know, I have this responsibility. The kids of the age I teach, they'll believe anything you say to them. So you have to kind of really, like, you know, be careful. You have to treat that with the responsibility that it deserves. And, you know, I thought that tied into the themes of the movie as well. You know, this idea that this whole movie's been about trying to convince someone of something, and he's used to talking to people who'll just believe anything he tells them because they're young kids. Yeah. You know, I thought that was an interesting little, like, counter to that, and just a little thematic device. But when he kills himself, and we get to this part at the end of the movie, Eric is convinced, and Andrew is convinced as well, but Andrew has said multiple times that even if I believed you, I'd rather the world end than kill one of us. Right? That's just how he feels. Yeah. And I get that. That makes sense. That is a completely understandable and believable response from someone.
Especially, like, you know, like you were saying, through the flashbacks and stuff, you see how much, you know, they've had to put up with their whole life, and how much, like, you know, discrimination and stuff they had to fight. So it's kind of like, yeah, like, you know, screw this world. Like, you know, like, this is just like one more person that's like discriminating against us. Like, you're telling me that, like, you know, after all we've been through, and we still have to sacrifice for this world that hates us, like, totally reasonable to be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it gives you compelling reasons why he shouldn't want to even bother saving the world. And I think part of the message of the movie's version of how the ending all plays out is the idea that if making this sacrifice to save the world is this truly kind of like heroic thing that is selfless, that you have to give up something you love to save the world, and that someone who has a right to hate a lot of the world because of how he's been treated, the fact that even he will go through with this is supposed to be like, you know, that makes him ultimately like really good at heart. You know, that's like, that's being so good that you're willing to do this in the face of this monumental monstrous task that you've been placed with.
You're S-tier human.
If you want to put it that way, yes. Because that's the thing, Eric's convincing him that, you know, to kill him. He's like, no, kill me because I believe this completely, and I'm thinking of happy thoughts. I want to die thinking these happy thoughts, so do it. And, you know, the camera cuts away and you hear the gunshot, but Andrew doesn't want to do it. You know, he has to be talked into it at the very end. Andrew's like, no, do me, do it. Like, I'll be the one who dies. And it's almost like because he's at peace with it, he wants Andrew to grow with his daughter. And in fact, Eric even says that he's now had a vision of older Andrew with their grown-up daughter, and we see like a little flash forward of like them in the future with her as an adult woman, and he's got some grey in his beard, and it's all this kind of sweet, the potential future that could be. Like this idea that someone who has been, you know, picked on by society, who's had his life made more difficult than it needed to be, he's been attacked, he's been made to feel scared, his own parents, you know, don't want to like spend time with him, all these things, but ultimately still at the end he's willing to save everyone. And that's kind of like the uplifting part of the ending in the story. And, you know, sure enough, the movie confirms it, where, you know, he takes Gwen out to, you know, because they walk down the road, they find it's Redmond's car, and there's a whole bit of Redmond we need to talk about. We'll go back and talk about that. But they drive to, like, you know, a local diner, and the news is on, and it's basically saying, yeah, this plane problem's like been fixed, like, you know, some planes have started to land safely, the flu's picking up, the hurricane tragedies have all kind of calmed down. There's even a nurse in Scotland being interviewed as part of the plague stuff for some reason. It was weird that they were watching BBC World, and I heard a Scottish accent just sort of creep in. But it's like, oh, you did save the world, and there's a little moment after this where he goes back out to the car before they drive off for the ending, where he looks into the bags that were in the car, and it's like all the IDs and stuff, or not even IDs, but just like stuff that belonged to these people. And it was like, you know, a picture of Adrian with her son. It was a picture, you know, Sabrina, the black woman, she was a nurse, and there was like her nurse's badge was there. And there was a photo of like Batista with his class or whatever. You know, it was all these things that showed like who they were in life, and it was almost like, yeah, they all gave this sacrifice too. It was almost like this acknowledgement silently that, oh, they all did this for very good reasons, even if it didn't feel like it in the time. So, you know, I think all that stuff's quite interesting. I think it's an interesting ending to me that I do get some meaning out of. And when I looked up how the book ended and saw how different it was, I'm like, damn, that completely changes how you would read the whole thing, to be honest. I mean, but like you say, one of the things that it does keep that the movie doesn't is that sense of ambiguity of, is this real or isn't it? So why don't you tell everyone the major difference from the book?
Yeah, so basically, earlier on in the book, there's a big part where, you know, because like you said, there's this Chekhov's gun thing. So at one point in the book, I think they're kind of like fighting for the gun, and it accidentally goes off. I forget like who's holding it or whatever, but it basically goes off and it kills Wen, which is
the little girl dies in the book. Okay, so
yeah.
It's very extreme. So
it's very sad. But then there's also a part where, you know, the guy's like, all right, well, there's your sacrifice, and then yeah, I forget like who's left at that point, if it's just Leonard or if one of the other people are there, but they're basically like, no, that doesn't count. Yes, she died, but it wasn't a willing sacrifice, it was an accident, so you still have to, you know, decide if one of you, you know, you still have to pick one of you to die. And they basically decide like, no, screw it. You know, we don't want to do that. And they kind of just like, basically they're kind of just like, well, the world we don't know if the world's going to end, but let's just kind of face it together. And then like, that's pretty much the end.
Which is also a very sweet ending, but it's just very sweet in a different way, because with that ending, it reads like, no, together we're better and we can fight anything together, even if it is the apocalypse. It obviously ends with ambiguity as to whether or not it is literally going to be an apocalypse or if it is just all been a lie. But that idea that, oh no, we can tackle whatever together no matter what. Whereas the movie does this thing where it sort of does turn it into this moment of heroism, where he's like, you know, despite all the bad things that we've had to go through, I'm going to save everyone anyway, because it's the right thing to do. So it's a very different, like obviously it's a very similar premise, but the endings completely change like what meaning I would take from what it's saying.
Yeah, no, I really do enjoy the book quite a bit. I think it's not super long. It's like a pretty fast read. It's by Paul Tremblay, who is a really good author. I like him quite a bit. But to be fair, I totally understand why they would change this for the movies. Like, I can't, like, I imagine mainstream audiences would have hated like if they, you know, were more close to the book. Like, I feel like, yeah, they would not have liked that as much.
Yeah, I don't think it would have went down. I mean, I might have liked it, but I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm sure like people like us probably, yeah, wouldn't have minded it. But I feel like I think we kind of talked about this before, but I hate this thing today where like, and you know, I don't want to lump, you know, this movie into it. Like, I don't think this is necessarily like part of it, but there is like a need for people to constantly have things like every little thing like answered and spoon fed to them, and like, you know, people really don't like you know, when stuff is kind of left up to ambiguity. You know, I feel like that's why like, you know, we get like so many like prequels that we don't need, where it's like, oh, like we're gonna explain how, you know, this guy got his famous red tie. Like, no, like we don't need to know that. Like, so yeah, I feel like yeah, people would not like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's smart ways to do it where you basically tell the audience without spelling it out. That's why I was saying I really like that moment after the diner when he looks in the car and sees all the personal items, because it was kind of like it was like after death now, because he's seen what they've accomplished, he's looking at these items and sort of seeing them for the people they actually were, as opposed to just this, you know, because the whole movie they're just this group of home invaders that are threatening his family and making him do something awful. But like after the fact, he's like, no, they really believed this, and he actually believes that they you know, that they were right and that this was going to happen. So it's moments like that are visual, where you get it without them having to say it, without him having to, you know, because, you know, a lesser script might have had him turn to his daughter and explain it all, because she'd be like, wait, Dad, were those people evil? And he's like, no, when this is what they were, and then explains it. So I'm glad they didn't do that. I guess they kind of had that whole like we can tackle things together thing a little bit at the end, but just instead of the couple, it's him and his daughter, where their like song that's in the flashback that they really like starts playing on the radio, and he turns it off, and they just sit there quietly, not even moving the car, they're just sitting in the car park, and then the daughter turns it on, and it plays for like a good 15-20 seconds before she's basically realizes, yeah, okay, I won't try and force it, and she goes and turns it off again, and then the silence for a few seconds, and I'm like, he's going to turn it back on. He's going to communicate back to her that no, we should still have hope in our lives. So he turns it back on. So it does kind of have that like we can tackle the world together no matter what, with her. But it's now with his daughter rather than with his partner, which is also a fine message. Like they're both got their moments. I guess you could look at the movies as being the quote unquote dumbed down one, because it took out the death of the daughter, which makes it feel like it's more sanitized, I guess, and it specifically said, no, this was real, this happened, they saved the world, like, and I think there's an argument to say no, it would have been better if we never knew if it was real or not, but we just got to the point where it was enough to believe that at least one of these characters believed it. But I think as it is there, I still enjoyed the ride, and I still enjoyed kind of like see everything play out. And it's like 95 minutes. It's not like it's very tightly paced. It does not waste time.
Yeah, especially in this era where I feel like everything is so bloated. It's nice to have a movie that's not afraid to be a little quicker in its pacing. Just to clarify, like the. Kind of making this choice, it didn't make me hate the movie. It's just, it kind of made me just be more like, oh, well, I kind of like the other way better, and I wonder what it might have been like, but it wasn't enough of like a choice to make me go like, oh, this sucks, or like, oh, screw this, or anything. It's like, I still think it works for the movie that they're presenting, and it's still enjoyable, but it's just something that I had to think about. Man, though, you gotta, I do wonder though, like if he ever, just like, because I know if this was me, I would constantly be in my head being like, crap, if I just would have believed a little bit sooner, I probably could have saved couple million billion people. Like
but I mean, I don't necessarily blame them for needing to be convinced.
No, I mean that's very especially like the first person is gonna have to kill themselves, because at the very least they're gonna need to see like at least one tragedy before they're convinced. Like it would be very strange if right from the get-go they're like, all right, we believe you, like, oh, you had some visions, okay. Like
but Rupert Grint in many ways, his character is the most deserving, because it turns out after he's dead that Andrew realizes that this is the guy that attacked him in a bar a few years ago, right? It was before they got Wen, so it must have been at least a few years. When she was adopted though, so it didn't need to be before her birth, I suppose, but you know what I mean. And I think they handled this perfectly, because I think if they showed me this flashback before they had him remember, I would have probably rolled my eyes and said, oh, this is like a oh, look at this connection in their past kind of thing. I'd be like, but because they have him remember it and go, wait a minute, I think that's the guy that attacked me. Because they do that first, and it comes up naturally where he kind of like, no, I think it was him. When they show that flashback later, I didn't roll my eyes when I saw him. I thought, oh no, now we're seeing how this happened. And maybe the reason why he was picked is because he has a personal connection to him. Because later on, when he's doing the whole like, oh, I've realized that they're the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It says they represent the four key pillars of humanity, which I don't know where these four key pillars come from, but he's like, Redmond, Rupert Grint's character, represents malice, the nurse's healing, Sabrina, the mother's nurture, and the Leonard is wasn't knowledge, but it was like
teaching knowledge or something. I don't know.
I would say I remember the exact word that was used, but yeah, it was along those lines. It was passing on knowledge, and maybe not. No. Anyway, but regardless, I thought maybe this feels like it's the moment at the end of the M. Night Shyamalan movie where the twist is like being revealed, and they're doing that kind of montage as he's saying all these things, but it's not really a twist because it's like, oh no, this is all more or less like what it's been building up to. It's fine, but it did occur to me that it was directed like it was a twist moment, and I thought that was interesting that he was kind of having that, even though, you know, it isn't quite exactly a twist in the same way.
Yeah, no, I could be wrong, but I do believe in the book that was another thing where you never really find out if he was actually the person that attacked him or not.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong. It's been a while since I read it, but yeah, I think that's like another example of it being a little more ambiguous than the movie. But I mean, you know, it's a small thing. Like, it's not really a big bother. Like you're saying that I like how, like, they do, like, when they do the flashback and stuff, I like that you never actually see, like, Rupert Grint. Like, you know, it's his voice and stuff, and, like, you know, you see a man, like, attacking with a beer bottle, but it's always, like, you know, he's out of frame, or you see the back of him, so you don't really, you know, you're still kind of, like, wondering, like, oh, was that exactly him or not? You know?
Yeah, and I liked, when this comes up, when he's like, hey, that's the guy that attacked me, Redmond's not his real name, his name's actually something else, and he says, go get his driving license out of his pocket or whatever, and I'll prove that that's who he is. And Leonard says, no, I'm not going to do that. And I actually thought that was a really interesting point, because I was like, you know, if Andrew is going to, like, argue that they're full of shit, the idea that Leonard doesn't want to go find this easy to find evidence, that, you know, this would just prove that it wouldn't necessarily disprove anything else they're saying, but if it proves Andrew's right about this, then it maybe gives them leeway to, like, start doubting other things. And it's like, oh, is your belief in what you're doing, like, fragile? And I think as the movie goes on, you don't think it is, but for the moment, I was like, oh, this is maybe him starting to actually poke holes in the whole thing. Like, maybe you are in an echo chamber. Maybe you don't like seeing evidence that actually proves what you're not. Because I think that's one of the interesting things, is that when they mention that they had all these visions, they found each other on a message board, and that's when Andrew pipes in and says, oh, wait, you found each other on a message board? So you four extremists found other weirdos that are just like you, and, like, convinced each other that this is, like, the end of the world and you have to do this. This sounds like an echo chamber. It sounds like, you know, anything like that.
Stories we've been hearing about, like, for the last, like, you know, what, 3-4 years or whatever.
I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why the movie works as well, is that, like, a lot of this does feel kind of oddly relevant to our time. Like, this idea of, but obviously the twist here being, because it's a movie, is that these people do seem like, other than Rupert Grint's character, who's a homophobe, but the other three all feel like they're decent people who have just, you know, they believe this is a thing that's happening. And I think when Andrew's, like, sort of trying to say, hey, no, like, he's a homophobe, this woman's very religious, talking about the nurse, who talks about having, like, a religious upbringing. I can't remember what he says about Adrienne, something about, I don't know, like, you know, he basically frames who they all are in a way that this is why they're attracted to an extremist group or something like that. You know, he's trying to, like, sort of like, this is why you're all attracted to this thing, and you've convinced yourselves to come and kill a couple of gay guys to, like, save the world. And obviously the interesting part of the movie is them being like, no, we didn't even know that, we don't care, like, this is just, like, we believe devoutly that you have to do this, otherwise we're all dead. So, yeah, you know, and I think all of this works as well as it does because of those performances, because of Bautista coming across like he believes every word of what he's saying. You mentioned the gun thing in the book. The gun thing does more or less happen. Obviously, Wen doesn't get shot, but there is the whole scene where, you know, Andrew, like, hobbles out to the... In fact, I love this, actually. When he gets out of his restraints and he cuts the rope, I really appreciated that he had jelly legs, because this is like the morning after they've been tied up all night. So yeah, he would have jelly legs. He wouldn't be able to just walk normally. So he gets to the car and he's looking for the gun, and Sabrina comes out, and Sabrina doesn't really want to hurt him too bad, because she doesn't want to kill him, but she's kind of just slowly stabs him with the crowbar, and he sides like, hey, stop this right now, mister. And then he gets his gun out, and, you know, she eventually gets shot, and that ends up being the last, well, not the last, but the third sacrifice of the Horseman characters. I just wanted to mention it because that was a big thing to gloss over.
And it's kind of funny that, like, we did go over, like, kind of gloss over it, or neglect to mention it, because not that it's not an entertaining bit, it was, but it just goes to show you, like, the real meat and potatoes of the movie is the the conversations they're trying to convince
the ideas.
Like there is still actiony bits here and there like that, but which I do like, but that's just kind of funny. Good stuff.
No, if anything, it's almost a little darkly funny the way that she's kind of slowly stabbing him, because it's just this very slow press into his side, because she's just trying to convince him to stop doing what he's doing.
It's kind of funny because I mean, watch so many horror movies, you see so many stabbings, but like it almost makes it worse that it is like a very timid kind of slow stab versus like the kind of that fast repeated stabbing like we're used to. That there was something about it made it seem a little more intense.
Maybe that's part of the horror of this movie. It's like, it's very easy to say the villain's this vicious serial killer who's going to stab you 20 times, but this movie presents villains, and it's debatable at the end if they are villains, of course. They're kind of not. But the idea that villains in the real world are the ones who present themselves as not villains. They're the ones that don't even do it because they want to, but because they believe they have to, for whatever their reasons are. So, it's because, they believe that the people in power have to stay in power, so they're going to put down the poor, or whatever it may be. That's just a broad example. But it's the idea that a villain's anyone who believes something that's going to, like, who basically insists upon ruining your life to achieve what their goal is, regardless of what their reasons are or what their background is or whatever. So it's kind of like a villain can be anyone around you and not just a guy in a hockey mask with a machete. That's kind of like where the horror comes from.
I mean, it doesn't really say it, but essentially the villain is God. Like,
God's a dick.
He's the Jigsaw of this, this movie.
Well, it kind of is. Going back to that opening where like the girl's like, "Hey, I'm not going to hurt any of you grasshoppers. I'm just going to keep you in a cage and like examine you for a bit and see what happens." Like, why is this what's happening? Why are these the rules of the apocalypse? Why does a family have to sacrifice themselves? Like, if this is a religious thing, like, God's just a complete asshole.
But I mean that's funny though. It does like make it pretty unique. I feel like among horror movies, like I'm sure there's probably other examples like we can think of, but like off the top of my head, I was trying to think if you have, like any other horror movie where, the villains aren't actively like, trying
evil.
to be villainous, or or like even the fact that like they don't actually kill anyone, like they're trying to make you kill yourselves and stuff. Like,
well, they killed their own group, but
but like I'm sure there's maybe some other examples you can think of, but
or even just the idea that a villain who like believes that they're doing the right thing, even if what they're doing is horrific.
Right. Like it's not like Freddy or Jason like has this like big ulterior motive, like with like, well, actually I'm doing this to save whatever.
Yeah, Jason's doing everything he's doing because he's really into climate change, because his lake has become so polluted. So he's protesting climate change. Jason Voorhees for Green Energy 2024. I think it's a really interesting film, and I think much like Cold, it left me enjoying the cinematography, enjoying how the scenes are directed, and much like Cold as well, it's not perfect. There's definitely things about the ending that feel a bit too neat that I wish, the ending does feel kind of almost safe in a way, where I'm like, oh, you could have been a little ballsier here with this. But, and the ending of Old was probably the weakest part of that as well, but I think the conversations that we get to have about just the ideas and, for me, like, obviously it's easy to say, okay, we can call these four characters the four horsemen of the apocalypse. We can say that this is God doing this, but it doesn't. Despite all these the premise, it doesn't get super religious or biblical in nature.
Sure.
It kind of leaves it very open to your own interpretation of like what is actually causing this. What is this? Just aliens beaming this down into their heads because they're the ones that are causing everything? I don't know, but it's not really the important part of the conversation. It's not a movie about religious belief. It's a movie about just believing in something and try to convince someone else that that's the thing that's going on. So, and maybe you could even read the ending as a negative in the sense that because they did convince them of this, maybe none of it, like maybe this idea, like to live in this world, you have to become as crazy as everyone around you who's saying that you have to be this way.
and maybe that's the sad part of the ending. If you want to look at it negatively, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's an interesting premise. I think it breeds a lot of discussion, and the performances are all good, and I think the direction's good. So, despite any like toothless ending elements I might mention, I think I mostly had a good time with it, and it went in quite quick.
No, yeah, I agree, and it's I think interesting. Like, yeah, it's a great way to describe this kind of Shyamalan renaissance we've had in the last, I don't know what, like 5-6-ish years or whatever.
Splice, not Splice, sorry, Split. Yeah, Splice is a different film. Split. Glass was a bit of a misstep, but I think that was just kind of, the movie had to be lower budget than it should have been, and it kind of hurt it. But I think Split, Old, and Knock at the Cabin, none of them are anywhere nearly as good as Unbreakable, Sixth Sense, or even Signs, but they're all interesting, worth watching movies. I think,
especially like coming after a time where he was like, he became a punchline and a joke. Like, he was like kind of like, he went from being like this, like, like, is he gonna be the next like like It director or whatever, and not like not like Pennywise the movie yet, but like the hot new thing to it kind of became like a joke that like his movies were like mocked and laughably bad, and it's really cool to see him have this like comeback where like you said, like the movies haven't been perfect, but they've all been like interesting and worthy of discussion, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, he was taking more hits than your mother on Halloween, Tim, for a time there.
What does that mean?
I don't know what that means.
I mean, like, I'm imagining like my mom dressed up as a punching bag for Halloween or something like that. Like okay, that would make sense. But
I think it was supposed to be slightly sexual, but I couldn't quite find the way of phrasing it. Yeah.
All right, well, I appreciate the effort. I mean, much like these Shyamalan movies, it was an interesting insult. If it didn't all completely work,
because you don't want to take it too far. You need to find that balance.
Yeah, you don't want to be too real.
Too real.
Like if you I'm not even gonna go there. Let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's not discuss what Tim's mother does on Halloween, everyone. So it's scary stuff. So that is there you go. I guess we're ready to rate Knock at the Cabin, if you would like to give your rating, Tim.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it's again, a really solid film. This was the second time I watched, because I watched it early at the start of the year, and and I liked it then, and then, but you never know. Sometimes is it gonna be boring now that I know what's going on? It still was a good watch, and there's a lot of stuff to appreciate about it. The cinematography is great, the cast is really good, the performances are great. It brings this really interesting, unique, thought-provoking premise. Music's not bad. I don't know if I wouldn't say necessarily like stood out like there's like a memorable track I was like, I have to download this or anything, but I think it fit the movie well. Again, like the just maybe some of the choices in the latter half of the movie, again, not bad. It worked for the movie that we're watching, but I don't know, I'm sorry, I just can't help but wonder if maybe if they're a little different or whatever, but no, still a solid flick, and I think I'll give it out of 10. That was 7 if you aren't keeping count.
Yeah, I was also too going to go with a 7. I knew what you were doing, but I still refused to keep count further. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not lowering myself to his games. But yes, 7 out of 10 for me. I think it's a good movie, not a great movie. Definitely some things to talk about. Like I say, just an ending that's just a bit more provoking, I guess. It was really what I was looking for. I'd have been cool with it being completely ambiguous if they really wanted to go that route. I didn't mind them not making it ambiguous, but I think there was maybe a way to do it that was not quite just, like turn on the TV and there it is. Because Which, by the way, like we never mentioned this, but the big earthquake that happens causes a tidal wave, and there's this on the news there's this big effect shot of this tidal wave coming towards the beach, and somewhere in the west coast, which so
it was a cool visual, but I kept wondering like, how did they get that footage? I imagine someone's just filming it on their phone, but like at some point they're gonna get washed away.
It does cut away, I think, before maybe it doesn't. I can't remember. But regardless, actually, what's really interesting about it is that it does make me think a little bit, when I'm thinking of that scene particularly, about The Abyss. I won't get into it as why. It's not the same premise by any means, but there's definitely a little bit of comparison to be made with one element here, and I do think it's interesting to think about that. I'd love to watch The Abyss again if they could finally release a version that isn't like 240p, you little bastards. Come on now, where's my 4K The Abyss? I want it. I need it.
Yeah, and give us Congo too while you're at it. Why is that not on Blu-ray?
It's in HD though. I'm pretty sure I watched it in HD.
I want it on Blu-ray.
It's probably got a Blu-ray in other parts of the world, Tim.
Yeah, well, I don't live in other parts of the world, okay? I'm not going up to Canada and getting it for Thanksgiving on October 5th or whatever.
Congo Blu-ray! It's on Blu-ray in Australia.
Oh, good day, mate.
For sure. Oh, it's got a US Blu-ray. What are you talking about? Warner Brothers came out on September 16, 2014. It's been out for 9 years. 9 years. And you sit here and you mock me with The Abyss doesn't even have an anamorphic DVD. Never mind a Blu-ray. Never mind a 4K version. Congo's been sitting there in 1080p for 9 years, Tim.
I swear I've searched for it before and I did not see it.
There's an Amazon link. You didn't look very far, right. Tim. It's on Amazon.
Was it a steelbook? Because I only collect steelbooks now, so.
No, it wasn't a steelbook.
All right, well, give us a steelbook, damn it.
Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It looks like it's a bit light on the extras, but the movie exists in high quality, so don't give me it. Jesus. Oh dear. Oh dear. Alright, let's knock at the cabin. Interesting film. I enjoyed my time with it.
Nice. Glad you enjoyed it. Always nice when to see you have a good time.
Thank you, Timmy.
I know some people like to watch you suffer, but not me. I think we're friends like to prefer it when you enjoy the movies.
I'm glad. I like it when you enjoy the movies too. Yeah. But if we are going to suffer, I'm glad that we get to suffer together at least. That's something.
Yeah, it's not as bad when you watch a bad movie with, like, when you have someone else to talk about it. Yeah. The worst is watching a bad movie that no one else has seen. And you're just like, you shouldn't watch it, but I need someone to talk about it with. Yep.
So there you go. October's going swimmingly, apparently. I don't know. So welcome everyone to Octoberthon. This is the second one probably that goes out because we did Renfield already, so this is probably episode 2. But yes, hopefully you're enjoying your October. There'll be more to come. What movies exactly, we're not sure yet. We're going to fit in as many as we can. Some new releases, some from earlier in the year, and maybe a couple of oddball picks from somewhere in the depths of horror.
Tee.
All right, well, on that note, you can support all the content and get bonus stuff over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. In fact, our first bonus episode in a year should be out this month, so go check out that. We don't know what we're doing for it yet, but I'm sure it'll be very good, whatever it is. So go check out that and help support all the content. But of course, if you can't do that, then just hit the like button on YouTube. It helps us out a lot. More people will find the channel, more people will find the reviews, and the bigger our audience grows, the more of this we can do. So go and have a look.
Next time you're you go to the movies and you go to the bathroom, just write in the stall like our YouTube handle. Say, for a good time, watch.
I think the sort of creeps who are going to like
follow that advice are not going to be looking for what they're going to find when they click on our YouTube tab. Just get a feeling. But anyway, that's the show, everyone. That's been Screams After Midnight. Well, keep enjoying October.
That's my parody movie. Knock out a bathroom stall.
We'll see you next time, guys. Keep watching scary movies. Goodbye and happy October-thon.